I want to have a tough conversation with you because these are the things we have to decide before we embed them in AI. We don't know our own morality. What are we putting into AI? And this one is a very tough one. Yesterday, Trump signed an executive order to expand access to in vitro fertilization, IVF. That takes the egg of the mom and combines it with the sperm of the father and puts it in a petri dish to create an embryo, a new life. IVF recreates the moment of conception, but in a lab. And it's a controversial process because at least those of us on the right, we celebrate the creation of life. It's a miracle that a couple that can't have a child or struggling to conceive can. But on the other hand, a lot of the embryos created in the lab are discarded. And if you believe that life begins at conception, that means you're throwing away, or worse, experimenting on new life. Liz Wheeler is here to take us through this maze. Hello, Liz. How are you?
Hi, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So, I saw that over 90% of the children created by IVF die, either left frozen and abandoned, destroyed due to eugenics, experimented on, or miscarried. Only 7% are born. What is the real... Make an argument for somebody who may not believe the petri dish is the beginning of life. Can you?
Yeah. And I want to start by saying that this is such a gut-wrenching topic to talk about.
Yes. Because
every baby born, regardless of the circumstances of their conception, is beautiful and worthy of dignity and has value and should be celebrated. So
yes.
All those beautiful babies that were created by IVF are not less so because that was the circumstances of their conception.
Correct. It's still a natural process. You're just making it happen in a lab, but it's still the miracle of life when you put those two things together.
Of course, those children are still made in the image and dignity, the image and likeness of God. And I also am deeply empathetic to married couples who are trying to conceive and are struggling to conceive. Before I had my first daughter, my eldest is 4 years old, I struggled to conceive for 3 years and I lost a baby, and it's horrendous. It's the worst thing that's ever happened.
Yep.
And so I understand how emotionally fraught this topic is, because if you're given this opportunity, if IVF can fulfill this deep desire in your heart to have a baby, I fully empathize with that. But all that being said, the reality of in vitro fertilization is not what it is portrayed to be, because for every one of those beautiful babies that's born, about 15 babies are killed. So it's not a pro-life endeavor to support in vitro fertilization as a solution to the infertility crisis that we are suffering in this nation. And we are suffering an infertility crisis in this nation. We've never experienced a point in world history where 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 7 women are struggling to conceive, where you have to make an active choice to try to have a baby versus just it happening, the way that doing what comes naturally.
Right.
And my argument against in vitro fertilization is a couple of things. First of all, it's anti-MAHA, right? One of the exciting things about the Trump administration is that he chose Bobby Kennedy to partner with him to actually investigate the root causes of the chronic health crises in our nation. And we're so excited about this. I mean, thank you, President Trump, for choosing Bobby Kennedy. Thank you, Bobby Kennedy, for never giving up and for praying every day for this opportunity. But let's apply that same philosophy to the fertility crisis. Let's not just put a Band-Aid over this. Let's go to the root cause and say, hey, why is women's fertility struggling right now? What could be causing that? Because that's not how it's supposed to be, and let's fix it.
So this is really, hang on just a sec, this is a really amazing stat. The rate of fertility in the United States dropped 3% in 2023 from 2022. From 2014 to 2020, the rate consistently decreased by 2% annually. There is something happening with our bodies.
Deeply wrong.
Yes.
Yes, there is. It's the same thing, to be honest. It's the same thing as what's happening to our children. We have big pharma and big food, and it's poisoning our bodies. It's disrupting our endocrine systems. It's disrupting our hormones, and it's resulting, testosterone levels and sperm counts are falling. Like, there are identifiable things, measurable things that are happening to our bodies that we can reverse if we stop letting big food and big pharma dictate. And that's where it gets back to IVF. So big pharma, this is a cash cow for big pharma. They make a ton of money off of in vitro fertilization, which means that they are unwilling, just like during COVID when they were unwilling to say maybe hydroxychloroquine, maybe ivermectin. No, they only wanted the vaccine because it profited them. That's similar to this. They don't want to look at restorative fertility. They don't want to look at NAPRO technology. They don't want to look at these other options that are healthier and more effective and more humane and more ethical because they don't profit from those things. So then we get to some of these numbers here. And these numbers are really what break your heart when you kind of zoom out and look at in vitro. So according to the CDC, just in the year 2021, there were 238,000 women who underwent IVF treatment, who underwent this procedure. Now, every time that a woman undergoes this procedure, anywhere, this is an unregulated industry, so anywhere between 5 and 15 embryos are created. Multiple of those embryos are then implanted in the woman. However, getting back to the statistic you started this segment with, over 90%, 93% of those they are not born live. They are either, all 15 aren't implanted in the woman, so many of them are frozen. They are, quote unquote, screened for bad genetics, which is another word for eugenics. They look for characteristics that they might not want in a child, and then they destroy or experiment on those embryos. And because in vitro does not address a woman's hormones and fertility in her body, oftentimes she miscarries. The risk of miscarriage with in vitro is much, much higher than an ordinary pregnancy or restorative fertility. So then you have the 238,000 women who underwent this. Say they have 10 embryos that were created. That's about 1.5 to 2 million embryos created a year. And yet, in 2021, fewer than 100,000 babies were born from in vitro, which means that anywhere between 1.5 and 1.8 embryos, which, Glenn, we know scientifically, spiritually, and ethically, our human life were destroyed, discarded, experimented, or remain in a freezer somewhere, indefinitely, which is more children are dying from in vitro than are dying from abortion in the United States of America.
So this is absolutely heartbreaking because, my wife and I struggled. We adopted and we struggled to have a child. And boy, when a woman wants to have a baby and can't, it just screws with your mind so badly. And it's heartbreaking when a couple wants to have a child and there's so many children that are being aborted and you're like, let me take them. Please let me take them. But this, when you say that the pharmaceutical companies like this because they're getting rich, the cost is between $12,000 to $25,000 per cycle, and it takes several cycles usually to take. So, it's wildly expensive. What does Trump mean when he says he wants to make it easier to access? Do you know?
Well, that's the thing about this executive order. And President Trump is a very open-minded individual. One of my favorite things about him, actually, besides how hilarious he is on Truth Social, is that he listens to those who voted for him. I think this sets him apart from almost any other politician that I've ever known in my lifetime. The executive order is not entirely specific. It actually just requests a report on how to make in vitro fertilization more accessible. And so what I would encourage President Trump and his team to do, what I would request from them is, think outside the box here. Like look at in vitro through the lens of Make America Healthy Again and say, wait a second, we're here to doge the corruption that exists between government and, big pharma or big food or whatever, DEI programs, all this stuff that President Trump has Elon Musk doing that we're all delighted with. Apply that philosophy to this too. Make sure that when you are looking at in vitro fertilization, you're looking at it through the lens of, hey, is big pharma lying to women, lying to families to profit themselves? Is this something that's actually existentially harmful for our country because someone else wants to make money? And meanwhile, they're hiding from women the fact that if you undergo in vitro, your child is more likely to have heart defects and, physical deformities, in addition to miscarrying, in addition to all of those innocent lives that are being, put on ice quite literally and discarded. And Glenn, one of the things that really chills me when I talk about, or when I research IVF, when we're talking about it, is this genetic screening that these embryos are given ratings on a scale of 1 to 10. Like, is this healthy? Is this not healthy? Do they have desirable characteristics? And to me, that's just a road. If it's not eugenics right now, which I would argue it is, it's the road to eugenics. So Trump's executive order, I encourage him to really focus on restorative reproductive health, focus on NAPRO technology, focus on MAHA. We can fix this crisis. We all want more babies. We all want the United States to have this incredible baby boom. I share that desire with him. I think it's wonderful that he wants to be pro-family, but let's do this right. Let's do this in a way that's never been done before.
So where does Bobby Kennedy, I mean, is this a passion point for him at all on at least restorative health for the pregnancy rate?
One of the interesting things about Bobby Kennedy is his curiosity. He's often portrayed, as an anti-vaxxer, but he is so open-minded to wherever the data lead him. And if he is presented with evidence that women's fertility, this is not how our bodies were intended to work. We were intended to be, very fertile. And something that we're doing, some intervention, environmental, food, pharma, whatever it is, stress, technology, this combination, this culmination, if something's not correct, then he wants to fix that.
But it's not just happening here in America. It is happening all over the world.
It is, yes. But what's interesting is the fertility crisis is happening in nations who have adopted more of a Western mindset to medicine, meaning pharma, and also food.
Liz, thank you very much for taking us through this. If people want to get involved, what would you suggest?
I would suggest reaching out to President Trump. Get on X, email, call, make your voices heard. And it's a tough topic. It's an emotionally fraught topic. There's a compassionate way to handle it. We obviously should handle this in a very compassionate way, but encourage President Trump to look at the reality of the IVF industry, because at the end of the day, for every one life that is born, about 15 babies are killed in this process. And we as a nation should not accept that morally.
Liz, thank you very much. Love you.
Thanks, Glenn.
God bless. She is the author of Hide Your Children. She's also a BlazeTV host of the Liz Wheeler Show, which is she's really, really very smart and really logical. You can find it at BlazeTV, but also YouTube.com at Liz Wheeler. And her Twitter is at Liz_Wheeler.